Good afternoon. It's Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
I'm Susan.
I'm Jim.
I'm Caitlin.
And somewhere Benton is lurking, as usual. Glad to have you with us this afternoon. And a slightly different topic today. We are discussing time travel, parallel universes, and their relation to the paranormal. It's topics that we discuss quite a bit, actually, privately, and have some strong feelings on. I think Susan's chomping at the bit to start.
I think it all just goes hand in hand, and I think, since the discovery of the parallel universes, you gotta almost put them together. I mean, just how the things work and how it all happens and the science behind it all, you can't help but not put it together.
Well, I know Lisa shared an article today that supposedly the Hadron Collider has proven that ghosts don't exist, but I don't know. It seems sketchy at best how they came to that conclusion.
Well, and comments on the post were basically that as well.
I mean, because science has proven that there is a fourth dimension. I mean,
well, actually, physics says there's at least 11, but we can't necessarily perceive them.
If you study any of the cliff-dwelling Indians, like the Anasazis, they actually believe they came from a fifth dimension.
Right.
I mean, they had their kivas, which, it's debated by historians what the kivas were really used for, but my personal opinion says that was their portals back and forth. I mean, especially the Anasazis, if you look back, they were basically only here 100 years.
Right.
And then, because a lot of their dwellings were later occupied by the Pueblos versus the Anasazis, so where did they go?
Well, and
there's no evidence that they went somewhere else.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and did we not discuss in our last show that that may be necessarily what happened with the Mayans?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden they're gone, and there's zero trace of that. I mean, come on.
There's some trains of thought that the Mayans did either go to another dimension, and there's also some trains of thought that they were taken by aliens.
Yeah.
Because some of their gear, regalia that they wore during ceremonies resembled what we would consider alien type wear.
Or spacesuits.
Or spacesuits. And even ancient Egyptians, when they would elongate the backs of their heads.
That's what I was just going to say. What about the Egyptians?
What do most modern day aliens are depicted? They got long orbital shaped heads.
Well, and Egyptian mythology and religion said that the gods came from the stars and gave civilization to man, that kind of thing, and so. And that's actually a fairly common theme around the world. So, it's entirely possible. Now, do I believe that they're gods? Not necessarily. Perhaps time travelers or from another dimension, more along the lines of a Stargate type thing. I don't know. But I just think as time goes on, they seem to be making more and more progress, that there are other parallel universes. There are things that we can't explain, and that article, I wasn't too satisfied with the explanations. We've only had the collider up a few years, and then. And a couple of years ago, they shut it down because they were worried that they were creating a black hole and things like that. I just don't know that we understand how it works well enough in order for us to make any conclusion about anything else. And as far as time travel goes, physics has said at least for the last 100 years, going back to Einstein, that, every point in time exists at the same time. And the only reason we perceive time in a linear fashion is so that everything doesn't happen at once. Otherwise, things that happened 10,000 years ago would be happening, and things that were happening in another 10,000 would be happening all at once. And our perception wouldn't be able to handle it.
Well, and I know some of them are spoof pictures, but you see pictures, if you look it up, time travel on the internet, you can see pictures of people that are not in the proper attire, and some of the photos have been analyzed by experts, and they can't prove that they're spoofs. I mean, how do you explain somebody in 1980s or 90s attire in a picture from the 1920s?
Yeah.
They stand out like a sore thumb.
There's a video, and it circulated some years ago about a commercial or something back in the 50s, and one of the I want to say it was a advertisement for Ford or something, and the people were walking on the streets, and you don't notice it, and that's the thing, is you don't notice it until somebody points it out to you. This guy walks by on a cell phone. And I had to watch it like 17 times I'm like, is that really what I saw? And then, and then you start to ask yourself, well, when they point it out, then of course you see it. Well, is it just mind control?
Right. Or you're just, just
they said it was there, so of course it's there,
Right. Or it was something else. It's not really a cell phone,
But there was an article about that there was a scientist from UCLA that they went through and went back to the company and got the original copies of the film, and it's exactly the way that it was. So it's not, it wasn't a fake, and they cannot explain it. They absolutely cannot explain it. They've tried to find the actors that were actors in the commercial, and they can't find this one person. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And, and of course there could be a lot of explanations for those things, but, when as they stack up over time, you do kind of wonder. And of course, again, is it just human arrogance that if we haven't figured it out by now, that we never will?
True.
Well, who's not to say that we won't figure out the mechanism for time travel in another 500 years or something?
Yeah.
I read an article just a few days ago that, the teleporters off Star Wars, they were actually working on something and it actually teleported it. It was laser particles, but they actually moved those laser particles from one spot to another by using a quote unquote teleportation device. So who's to say that couldn't be a thing of the future?
And then there's examples in the past that you have to wonder about, like the Philadelphia experiment. Was the ship transported? It appeared 150 miles away minutes later, and some of the sailors later said no, nothing happened, but of course I'm sure they were ordered to do that, playing devil's advocate. Then the one that came out and was the basis of the book, Philadelphia Experiment, said otherwise. And, some people will say, well, he was just looking for glory or whatever. But, there were things that didn't quite add up. But there were independent reports that the ship disappeared. So
Well, think about the reports, any report that I've read personally about someone that has experienced a confrontation with a UFO, or has claimed they've been abducted. What is the common theme of that? Time loss. Time loss is the common theme to every single case you ever read. And so, doesn't that kind of go hand in hand? Doesn't that kind of fit?
Well, and some, and on some level it does. I mean, now, could it be just that, they're sedated so they don't recall it? I guess that's possible. But even looking at, what we do now in paranormal investigations, there are times that people will have time loss or time distortion. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had that happen to multiple people at Kendrick House in Carthage, I've witnessed it where people, swore that hours had passed and it was 5 minutes, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And it usually centered around them walking in the yard in one certain area. And why? I don't know. I mean, we can't particularly figure out why. Kate is smiling. You've had your own experience there, haven't you?
Yeah, that was my very first, I guess, quote unquote paranormal experience when I didn't see anything, but I felt a whole lot of things. So
so I mean, and why isn't that just something that is explained by physics?
I think because it can be explained.
I think it can be too. It's just a matter of we aren't comfortable with explaining it yet, or
I think, unfortunately, when there are probably more things that may have been explained, I'll just use Area 51 as an example. Mm-hmm. What's there or not, we don't know. There's only certain people that do know what's there. Mm-hmm. But who's to say that the government doesn't have a time travel machine? They're not going to tell us.
Well, yeah.
Who's to say they don't know of people time traveling or know of other dimensions? Heck, maybe we sent people to other dimensions. I'm not saying that it's happened, but our government has shown more than once they're willing to hide stuff.
Well, it would create mass panic.
And
well, yeah.
Even if somebody privately did it, I think you're going to get more than likely, if you publish it or let it known, you're going to get a visit from probably somebody in black.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next statement of the other correlation with every single report of UFO contact or alien contact is that days later, people show up at their house claiming to be from a certain organization, but never really present who they are. Mm-hmm. And quiz them about what happened, blah, 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 and then they leave and they're gone, and then that organization supposedly you can't find again.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think there's I think there's a whole lot more answers out there that we probably won't get because, number one, would create mass panic, and number two, it negates their mind control. That you've got to make the public believe this because then we can keep them right where we want them. Which I think a lot happens with the paranormal field too. People don't want to admit it because it will create mass chaos.
Well, it would change people's worldview. Mm-hmm. And that,
especially from a religious standpoint,
then the churches couldn't control.
I think,
right.
Unfortunately, religion does play a big part in our government, whether it should or not. If you want to go by the rules, there should be separation of church and state, but that doesn't always happen. I know there's things that the Catholic Church doesn't want out. Currently reading a book that opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Just a little aside, one thing I would love, one place on earth I would absolutely love to get into would be the Vatican Library. But that's never going to happen because I don't have those kind of credentials. But that would be, there's no telling what all is in there.
Exactly. So, I know it's hard to fathom, the Back to the Future car, but I've got an uncle that's a mechanical engineer that says the technology for electric cars has been around for 10, 15 years now. Mm-hmm. To go a lot farther than what they do now at better speeds. I know the new Tesla car is proving to be quite effective, but unfortunately, the government and big oil has squashed that technology.
Well, there's too much money to be made on other on other technology, and to be honest, that is why the gasoline combustion engine prevailed, was because you originally you had steam engine, and then they did experiment with electric cars even early in the 1900s, but you had people, we're starting to sound a little conspiracy theorist here, but you had people like the Rockefellers who were making too much money off of oil and gas. You exploit that as long as you can.
I understand the term conspiracy theorist, but to me it's not a conspiracy when you can find the proof to back it up.
Well, that's true. That's true. But most people would view it as more of, that's conspiracy. Why would they do that? Well, there's just too much money to be made. Let's
say money talks and BS walks.
Exactly.
I really do enjoy a good conspiracy theory video. I'm not
That's what you find you're doing at 2:00 in the morning.
You can get lost on conspiracy theory videos, but
I was a little freaked out there by the tone of her voice.
Some of the ones she's watched,
and I will go back and do a little bit of research,
and can be very compelling. Extremely compelling.
I'm not one to believe everything I read or whatever. I want to see for myself, but I will say that we happen to know someone that is a very, 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 and I can't even stress this enough, very high-ranking military person. And I've heard straight from his mouth, there are things that you don't want to know.
Oh, I don't doubt that. There have been certain mechanisms in society since there's been a civilization to keep the masses complacent. And whatever you think about communism, and of course what communism is today is nothing about theory, but as Marx said, religion is the opiate for the masses. It keeps them occupied. And that's the same thing with other things, keeping them occupied with, to be honest, keep them diverted with certain entertainment or this or that, so they're not thinking too much.
Yeah, you just put the sheep out to a new pasture.
Exactly.
And you've got certain, what are those people that herd sheep?
Shepherds. Shepherds.
So, I don't know. I don't have a sheep farm. I don't know. If you don't have a sheep farm, I apologize. But you have a few people who know just enough to give you just a little bit more to keep you, I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
And so it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's so fascinating that you find yourself scratching your head sometimes I don't know what to believe. So everything that I just read, was it all false? Every report, just because some scientist at UCLA says it's so, doesn't necessarily mean it's so.
Well, that's true. And there's certainly a number of things through history that, it comes out later that, there were pretenses and pretexts for why something was done or whatever that, served the interest of a king or the Pope or whoever it might be that was powerful. And, just one example on these lines is the First Crusade. Was always, basically was marketed to Europe and to the knights who were going that, this was a fight against Islam. Well, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. It was power, and it was holding the Ottomans back, but it really didn't have anything to do with religion. It was economics, and that's what usually fuels most things is economics. And so, but for the last 900 years, what do you hear? Oh, it was a fight between Christians and Muslims. And if you actually go into the history about it, it really wasn't. And so, who's to say that isn't happening now? And people are saying, "Oh, that can't happen," or whatever. And in a few hundred years, we find out, exactly.
It's interesting.
But And I think there's just a lot of people that really don't want to think about the concept of, say, parallel universes. Mm-hmm. The thought, oh, there is a me in another universe, or a me in 100 other universes. Mm-hmm. I saw a meme actually this morning. It was just like, well, I hope me in the parallel universe is doing well today. I mean, it's most people don't want to think about that.
If I have a bad day, do they have a bad day?
Yeah, maybe they were having a really great day. We, as human beings, want to be the center of the universe, the center of attention, whether we want to admit it or not. Mm-hmm. And to think that, there are, who knows how many universes out there, with us all doing whatever in them, it makes us less significant, and so I think that's part of the concept that people just don't want to face. Plus, it really calls into question the role of a creator, etc. I mean, physics is starting to really say that the universe has existed a number of times.
Oh yeah.
And basically imploded and started over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were kind of talking on the way up here. We were kind of talking about religion a little bit and some of the things that goes with that. And I said it kind of just in passing, but then after I said it, I thought about it a little more. Mm-hmm. And I would consider myself probably now more spiritual than putting a label on anything, or I'm this religion or I'm that religion. Mm-hmm. Because for me, I feel more connected with the earth and the wind and that kind of thing, more so than being in a building and being read to out of a book. And,
yeah.
And I'm not saying that's bad, because don't get me wrong, I love going to mass on Sunday morning, but it's just different. And mm-hmm. I think that you're shorting yourself and you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't experience the different things, because it will make you question what you believe. And as humans, we should question it. We should be able to think on our own and be able to say, I don't think that's right, or I don't agree with that, or right. Wait a minute, what you said 5 minutes ago doesn't make sense of what you said right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, and even if you want to look at it from a religious concept, if we weren't meant to have free will, why were we given free will?
Right.
Mm-hmm. To think independently. And now, here's the flip side. Let's play devil's advocate, no pun intended, but, what's the consequence then of the concept of demons and inhuman entities in the paranormal?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you think?
He has that.
Yeah, he has
look.
He has that look.
What do you mean by the consequence?
Well,
I think if you believe, going from the book I'm currently reading.
Well, go ahead and put it out there.
It's Stephen LeChance's Confrontation with Evil. If you haven't got it yet, you need to get it and read it, because it's a very well written book, and it will open your eyes to a lot of things. But to me, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, whatever, Muslim, I mean, they all have their diabolical entities interwoven within the religion. And
so do pagan religions, as far as that goes.
To me, if you're going to believe in one, there's some belief in the other. If you go back to Chinese philosophy, there's the yin and the yang.
Right.
I mean, so...
Well, and even if you don't want to couch it in religious terms, I mean, just human nature. If you have people who are more pure heart, you have psychopaths.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's.
So I think the balance. If you look at it from a balance of power issue, if you believe in bad, you need to believe in the good too.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I agree with you there.
So I don't. Do I think there are diabolical, to use one of Stephen's favorite words in that book, things out there? And do I think there are demons? Heck yes. There's been too many documented cases. Do I think that priests are able to come in, or whatever religious affiliation, pastors, that, because it's not just Catholics, do exorcisms, call on a higher power to help rid? Yes, I believe that. Too many documented cases.
And sometimes I wonder whether is it the religious aspect of the ceremony, or is it just the force of will? And no, we don't believe in do-it-yourself exorcisms.
No, that's
Please don't do that.
Yeah,
don't do that, because waterboarding somebody to get the demons out of them doesn't work.
No,
it's just going to get you thrown in jail.
But that kind of comes down to that free will issue. I mean, and who has the stronger will? Even if you don't want to put it in religious terms.
I think whoever's performing the rite of exorcism, whatever, needs to be well versed in what they're doing, and needs to be somewhat, and I'll use this term, pure of heart, to be able to do what needs to be done. Because you've got to be convicted in whatever and I don't even want to use religious. You just have to be convicted in what you're doing. If you go into it as a DIYer and half-heartedly, you end up going to either hurting yourself or hurting the person, if they're even afflicted.
Yeah.
I think every case that I've read about, the people that are actually confirmed to be possessed have had extensive psychological
and physical
examinations done to prove that there's nothing psychologically or physically wrong with them prior. And in most of the cases that I've read, it has been Catholics that have done the exorcisms because they document them so well. But they've went them through very rigorous medical, testing before they started the rite of exorcism.
Yeah, sometimes months pass before they actually start the rites. I mean, and I think that is part of it. Is this just something that's happening at a time? Is it attention seeking? That kind of thing. You have to rule all those things out. And but I agree. I think that there is, as you said, yin and yang, and so good or bad, however you want to put it. And I don't even want to get into the philosophical, basis of why is there good and bad. But it just seems to be a constant in the world.
Well, every different civilization has a different concept of what started the good and the bad.
That's true.
I mean, if you go from biblical scripture, it started in the Garden of Eden. But every different civilization has their thoughts and teachings on what caused the good and the bad.
Right, and and even whether this is uncomfortable for people or not, when you talk about the Bible and the Garden of Eden, good and bad, those concepts were not new to the Hebrews. They did not invent them. It goes back to the Egyptians and the Sumerians, and who knows before that, an oral tradition. Who knows? We just kind of fool ourselves to think, it was compiled here, so this is it, and I think that's maybe that's the thing, is sometimes I think of it more in terms of just the strength of will between two opposites. And I mean, again, there's theories out there that the fallen angels were not bad. In fact, there's theories that they're more aligned with the original purposes that they were created for than our concept of God and the archangels. So, and that's not being Satanist or anything. That's just,
Yeah, there's a whole... honestly, that's a whole nother show. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, a whole series.
Yeah. Just for my opinion, again, it's my opinion, and I'm going to give it anyway, but I of course, Jim and myself and Kate are Catholic, and with that being said, we get a lot of questions all the time, and where we live is not high in Catholic culture, I guess. And so one of the things we get all the time is, oh, well, you guys aren't really Christians. And it makes me laugh because most of the time those people can't even tell you what a true Christian is in the first place. And I always throw the same question back at them. When you ask yourself, what is heaven going to be like? Is heaven? Is heaven another space and time? Is, you know what I'm saying?
Another dimension.
Is heaven another dimension? Which I have often have very strong thoughts that isn't not the case. Go ahead.
But it would make sense if it was another dimension. Because then, to me, it would be easier. And I know that super religious people, and I don't have anything against that, would say that people are coming back as spirits, as angels. But if you go through the train of thought that heaven is another dimension, the spirits are able to cross that dimension a lot easier. Therefore, your loved ones do come back, and it doesn't necessarily have to be as an angel or whatever you want to call it. They come back and forth and come back to the places that they're familiar with and they love. Yeah. I have no doubts that my father comes and visits me on a very regular basis. Not because I've necessarily seen him. I have felt him one night, and it was after Susan told me that he came and visited regularly. One night I was laying there and had actually spoken to him. Didn't know he was there, and I was laying there with I know you can't see this, but my arm kind of propped up, and all of a sudden I had a slight pressure that pushed my hand down. And I know without a shadow of a doubt it was my dad.
Yeah.
So, and my dad was one of the most devout people you could meet. So whether you believe in the other dimension or heaven or whatever, I know my dad went there.
Right.
He went to a place of enlightenment.
Yeah. Well, and if it's parallel universes, it may not be, quote, enlightenment. It may just be a little different. And perhaps we're just, it kind of dovetails into the idea of reincarnation, that perhaps, maybe next time around you're incarnated in another dimension. I don't know.
Because, when you have, I think people with near-death experiences fit into this. Mm-hmm. What dimension are they going into? Is it necessarily heaven, or are they just going to another place?
Right.
Because not necessarily every one of them that goes into the light and sees something else, they don't always see their loved ones. Some of them do, but some of them just see peaceful places.
Or just light.
Who's to say what they're actually seeing? There's not a science that really, unfortunately, really explains it.
The closest, usually the medical explanation is, it's just a hallucination from deprivation of oxygen. Well, so is it just deprivation at a certain point that they come back and they aren't brain dead? I don't know. Humans are we cling to our self-concepts, and while we're fond of saying that life is always full of change and things change, we don't like change. And so we usually don't like concepts that challenge what is.
I've often, I was driving down the road the other day, and I had this thought, and I thought, if somebody could calculate around the world in one day how many people die and how many babies are born, how do we, if that number matched, isn't that kind of strange?
Well, it is. Of course, the population is increasing, so it's
right,
more,
I know, but I'm just saying. I think there's something there.
But on the other,
of course, if you believe in Buddhism, you don't always come back as a person.
Yeah,
you can come back as a fly,
right?
Or a grasshopper.
It might be 1,000 years before you come back. And how many people have existed throughout history? There's more that have died through history than are living. So you could and why they're more reincarnating at a particular time. I don't know. Science would just say it's better food, better water, etc. And so we're healthier, and that's why we're more stable. And
as we sit here with our McDonald's cups, yeah.
Well, it's
and the monsters.
Yeah, it's still healthier than being chased by tigers and lions. So.
Okay, true that. All right, I'd much rather have a Big Mac than be chased by tigers.
There you go. We're likely to survive the Big Mac.
We're all going to die at some point. Why not die happy? Correct.
That's
true.
right.
I'd rather die from eating the Big Mac than being chased by a mauled by a tiger.
Yeah, there you go.
And run. So I would just stand there.
I'm telling you right now, I don't have to be the fastest person.
It's got to be faster than the
I've just got to be faster than the slowest person, and I will break knees.
I have often said I will mow a kid down. I have no problems with that. I will push a kid out of my way.
We've kind of gotten into a very esoteric conversation here. And then it kind of went downhill.
It did. A little bit.
I think when you talk about parallel universes and stuff, it's so, because, I looked some stuff up before today, and it goes so deep. I mean, it really is and don't mean a pun.
Literally deep.
It's a seriously deep concept that has so many theories from so many different angles. Of course, I'm always drawn back to the cliff-dwelling people and in a lot of the natives' beliefs of, and I understand. I think the spirit quest that most tribes take is them going, and I understand they take hallucinogenic drugs, but I still think it takes them into another dimension.
Well, that's possible.
Believe that. Because, especially you two being more sensitive in a psychic standpoint, understand that alcohol, drugs, hallucinogenics drops y'all's guard, which y'all can see further into the veil when that guard's dropped. So why wouldn't the same thing happen on a spirit quest?
I'm just going to say what sounds fun for someone else, for someone like myself and Lisa and Kate, it's not a real good time.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah. So granted, yes, they took peyote, and yes, I understand it's hallucinogenic, and yes, I understand some of the stuff they may have solved just be a good high.
That's the reason why they took it.
But how do we know that we don't know that they weren't going into another realm to actually seek out their spirit animal or whatever spirit quest that what they were wanting to find on their spirit quest? With them believing in the other dimensions, why can't it be possible that they took those to drop their guard? Because we as a team believe everybody can have a psychic quote unquote gift. It's just a matter of learning it, what it is, trusting yourself to use it. So why is it not possible that because they didn't know they had gifts, other than maybe the medicine man, that they took those to open, quote unquote, open up their gifts to be able to transfer.
And really isn't just identifying a shaman or a medicine man just identifying the person in the tribe that has the most gift to begin with?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Really, and that really goes back to all native populations around the world. I mean, that's a universal. I think it's definitely possible, and I mean, I can't speak for Susan or Kate, but I've had experiences that I certainly wonder, if it was this dimension or another, or as we say, crossing the veil to the spirit world, that I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I can say that often what my experiences at that time bear out over time.
If I had to give an ending quote, I would have to say I've learned to come to expect the unexpected and to believe the unbelievable.
Right, and you just have to accept what as things go. And to be honest, I think that's one of life's big lessons: is you just have to accept things as they come and see where they go. And sometimes we have a little help with that information. But I do really. More and more as I go along, and the more I investigate and so forth, I tend to lean more and more towards the idea of parallel universes. I really do.
Well, I'll give an example of one of the places that we investigate quite frequently, the Opera House. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a residual. We're fairly certain it's a residual of the person falling down the back stairs. It happens at the same time every day.
Yeah.
So those 2 points in time, our time and their time, are matching up that same time every day.
Yeah, and it even changes when daylight saves time.
So to me, that right there, yes, it's not scientific, but it's very curious that those times match up every day.
Yeah, that's
pretty much
true.
Without fail.
Very, very true. Very, very true. So
to me, that's 2 points in time over different periods that are lining up. Mm-hmm. Well, that's parallel dimensions.
As Einstein said, all points in time exist at the same time. So, is that happening at every point in time at that time of day from here on out? And who knows? Maybe it's happening in time. Times before that building was built. I mean, you just, and we say, well, it couldn't happen before the person actually fell down the stairs. Maybe it can. Mm-hmm. If those times are all connected.
Mm-hmm. Well, if all times are connected, then there isn't a past, present, or future.
Exactly. That's what Einstein said.
It's all the same.
Yeah, he said we just don't, we can't perceive, our brains can't perceive it that way, and so our perception of time is a kind of an invention of our mind, so that basically every point in time doesn't happen at once, and basically we blow a fuse because we couldn't deal with it.
I think there's other examples of like, when we've done Civil War places and they don't recognize us. Mm-hmm. They're seeing, we're at the same point of time, but they're seeing us in strange clothes in a strange spot,
right,
that they perceive as their guard post, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it, nothing's ever happened other than Lisa did get wet sacked one day.
Yep. Good time.
It's just odd to me that, they react a certain way. They're obviously seeing into our dimension.
Yeah, they're seeing us And, and I think they're seeing us in their time and in that location, too. Another thing that tends to happen is the soldier spirits that are there are very mistrustful of men. And I think it's because they're always wary, is this a friend or foe? But they don't react that way around women. So often we will separate the men and women. And we've had experiences where they will actually guard us and walk around the women. I mean, I've heard them walk around and you could even hear their trousers swish. And, like they're protecting us from the rest of the team. So, those points in time are dovetailing somehow,
Well, and I think another experience that made me even, question that and look into that deeper is the investigation in our house.
Yeah.
When the little boy's voice came on the EVP and said, "There's people here." I mean, it surprised the kid because he was seeing people in a room that he was not expecting to see.
Right. Exactly. And those things make you wonder.
And I mean, that's one of the clearest EVPs that I've ever heard. I mean, on our rating system, that was Class A because everybody that ever listened to it that had no idea, family members that live in Texas that I've heard knew what that said without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, it was very clear. Well, and if all those points in time exist together, then why isn't time travel possible?
And that correct. And I will give anybody a suggestion that wants something to watch that kind of goes with our subject. Watch the movie The Others. It will give you a whole nother perspective on what we're talking about. It's not a scary movie by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm telling you, it will give you a better understanding of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's, I still haven't watched that.
It's.
Oh my God.
I read it.
We own it. I will bring it to you.
Okay.
Well, I read an article written, an interview that was done by the guy that directed it, and I cannot remember his name. You'll have to look it up. But he was real when they handed him the script and said, this is what we're thinking. And the movie stars Nicole Kidman. That helps you find it. And he said that he often wondered whether or not, we had parallel universes, and if his word that he used, and I don't particularly like this word, but he said if ghosts are there, are they there at the same time we are? And how does that work?
Yeah.
And how, do they see us? Do we see them? I don't know. And so this movie is a lot loosely based on his own questions, I guess you could say. And so then I watched the movie again, and you got to watch it a couple of times, and you'll catch different things. But in the very end, we'll explain everything to you, and it really will make you go, okay. Because he didn't believe me until he watched, because I had seen it and he watched it, and because I had told him that, and he watched it, and that's the first thing he said after he watched it. He was like, "Oh my God!" He was like, "You're right." So it's interesting.
It will give an
illustration of what we're talking about.
Yes, and anybody that's in the paranormal investigating, and to me, it will open your eyes to what spirit is potentially seeing when they're coming through.
Yeah.
So to me, it's watching that movie makes me appreciate even more our philosophy of not instigating or provoking.
Well, yeah, and that's...
I mean, I know that's a whole nother subject, but just as I'm leery of meeting new people, why wouldn't spirit, if you're walking into their house, because we very much believe when we walk into a location, especially if it's a family that lived there forever and had generations die there, we're walking into their house. And it's nothing but respect, and you're strangers in their house. I wouldn't expect somebody to start yelling and screaming at me coming into my house.
No.
So... anybody that's not seen that movie that's interested in parallel dimensions and ghost hunting and what ghosts might perceive us like, please watch that movie.
And I just was going to add that, if you hear people talk. I don't go around announcing that I'm a paranormal investigator. I don't hide it either.
Right.
However, I've had people say, "Oh my God, that's got to be so scary," and it's really not. I mean, the thing that's scary to me is the Freddy Krueger movies. Those are scary.
Yeah.
You know, the Friday 13th movies, those are scary. But this isn't. And one of the reasons that it's not to me is because when you hear something or you, and I'm just going to use this as an example, if someone was to hear a lady scream in the house, it's not a lady screaming because it's a demonic spirit. It's a lady screaming because maybe she can't find her baby.
Yeah.
You know, maybe she's screaming because
She fell.
she fell off a horse. I mean, you don't know.
Or some of the Civil War houses, maybe she's having a baby. We're just in there at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
It's not
that
always
it's
bad.
residual and that she's having a baby. And I've not met many women that had babies that didn't
Scream with no drugs, yeah.
Exactly.
Especially when they have, and I know this is on video, and they have big, almost 10-pounders.
Yeah. It happens.
No pain medication.
That's right. You know.
But I just, you know, I think that we kid ourselves if we think that we're the only ones that exist and we're the only ones that know anything. And, you know, and it's funny that you talked about the yin and the yang earlier today, because I have this little thing on my email that tells me what my sign of the day is, which I know it's silly, but my sign of today was the yin and the yang. So I just thought it was funny that you mentioned that, because
Foreshadowing.
yeah,
Yes.
there's good and evil, and they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
And sometimes, whether people like it or not, they complement each other.
Well, yeah, because how do you, in some respects, how would you recognize the good without the bad?
Right.
Exactly. And I think that's the from what I've read on the yin yang, that the Chinese believe there's got to be that balance. Mm-hmm. For a harmonic world, there's got to be a good balance between the good and the bad, the good and the evil, whatever you want to say.
And if something is if it gets thrown off, you must do something to correct it. Mm-hmm. So, just saying. Something else.
That may be another topic, but and controversial, especially in this field. But you know, and that kind of goes into, again, you know, what do you do, and does it have repercussions? So that may be a topic for another day. Mm-hmm. Now, we do have a couple of fun podcasts coming up. Next Saturday, we are going to have Stephen LaChance on.
Yeah!
Well, in 2 weeks. I guess it's in 2
weeks.
weeks. 2 weeks. We are going to have one next week, and we haven't quite decided what we're going to do yet. Susan may have thrown the gauntlet down there. But on
next week?
the 25th, the 24th and 25th.
25th, yeah.
We were talking about doing a podcast on the 24th.
On the 24th, yeah. Earlier in the day.
Oh.
And so, I don't know, maybe that's our topic, is what do you do? Mm-hmm. What do you do when you're facing an imbalance of good and evil? That's a loaded question.
It is. It so is.
And then on the 4th, we will have Stephen LaChance on, and he'll be talking about his new book, Confrontation with Evil, about the Exorcist case, and other things as well. And then the following Saturday, March 10th, we will have Jason Offit on, and Jason is one of our favorite guests. Jason has a new book out called Road Closed, which is actually his first horror collection, featuring the novella Matriarchal Nazi Cannibals. Only Jason would come up with a title like that. It's so Jason Offit is all I can say. So we are going to have some interesting podcasts coming up the next 3 weeks. So we invite you to tune in, and we will have more details coming up. Just check the Facebook page for Paranormal Science Lab, and you can always send us messages about things you want to hear about or questions. So we appreciate it.
I was going to say, feel free to message us and tell us about a topic that you want to hear discussed.
Yes.
Most definitely.
So we appreciate, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.